Why isn't dysgraphia under special education? And some of it is under 504. That's a good question. Okay. And, dysgraphia is, I think, primarily depending on what kind of dysgraphia you have. I mean, there's going to be 5 different areas from my understanding for dysgraphia, where it could be dyslexic dysgraphia, it could be spatial dysgraphia, it could be motor dysgraphia, phonological dysgraphia, and then lexical dysgraphia. I mean, there's not just sort of one. So, and you sit there and you go, well, geez, James, I didn't know that. How do I find out more? Google. You can do it that way. That's sort of the simple way to sort of sum that up and get a little bit more understanding and knowledge. But I think primarily what parents are dealing with, or what schools have recognized in dealing with, is more of the motor dysgraphia. And so therefore, as far as what the schools have acknowledged and what they're treating. So in that capacity, you end up having sort of your educational performance areas or your eligibility categories. And you got to think about dysgraphia similar to, let's say, dyslexia. There's not in the 13 categories, there's not a dyslexia category either. It's just under the umbrella of specific learning disability, which, depending on the kind of dysgraphia you have, it could also sort of fall under that umbrella of specific learning disability once you are eligible. And then, of course, it's open for the IEP team or the ARD committee, depending on what state you live in. It's the same thing, IEP team. But it's as to what to do about it, and sort of this grand acknowledgement of attacking your child's specific issues with phonological dysgraphia, for example. And so it falls under that umbrella. And it's similar to Down syndrome, guys. I'm talking about as far as eligibility category. There's no Down syndrome category. Now, why is that? Because it could be covered under multiple different eligibility categories, and it could be attacked in a bunch of different ways. And so there isn't one specific category for Down syndrome, just like dysgraphia. So within that, like I said, under the umbrella of specific learning disability, some of it can be handled there. But the other thing is, some of it can't, because it doesn't fall under the category of let's say, orthopedic, a category which would include, let's say, an occupational therapist. Now, some of the issues in dysgraphia are within that expertise and purview of the occupational therapist. But under the IDEA, you would need to be under this eligibility umbrella in order to justify the need for the specialized instruction to attack the dysgraphia. And that's sort of where there's a disconnect and a disagreement currently, and maybe that's going to work itself out. We haven't had a revision to the IDEA since 2004, guys. And so we're still working off of the 2004 law. And, the more you just don't know how they're going to expand that, because they've done that. So maybe this next time around, the changes will be made in that category. And that would be why 504 would handle some of this dysgraphia that isn't necessarily under the umbrella if your child isn't meeting one of these categories for eligibility for specialized instruction under the IDEA. It could be provided through occupational therapy in a 504, okay? Because it's not specialized instruction. You're receiving accommodations, and receiving occupational therapy intervention would be that accommodation in order to put your child in a position of equal access and being able to have the necessary accommodations comparable to their same age peers that don't have those issues. Okay, so that's why 504 is permissive of including occupational therapy for specific types of dysgraphia. But like I said, there's multiple types of dysgraphias. You sort of have to figure out what is impacting your child so that you understand how to present that information to your IEP team so that you can have that included. And I know a lot of parents are going to say, but my IEP team won't recognize it. Welcome to the club, guys. That's exactly why I exist. Guys, if it's not written in some manual somewhere, and if it's not some current training or focus that they're, a lot of our educators will unfortunately just sort of say, we don't do that. It doesn't mean that they're right. Okay. And it doesn't mean that you stop advocating. It just means that you need to gain more knowledge. You need to gain more insight as to how to navigate that, because it can be a component within your child's, let's say, specific learning disability umbrella, or under autism, under OHI. It just doesn't matter. It can be considered by the IEP team as an area that needs to be addressed, as long as you can point to its negative impact on your child's educational performance. And their educational performance areas are where we create goals and services and accommodations and supplemental aids and services, all of those things. That is academics, that's social emotional development, it's communication, and it's functional independent living skills. So as long as you can sit there and say the dysgraphia and the specific kind that my kid is impacted with is having a negative impact on academics or on communication, because there is also phonological dyslexia, or I mean dysgraphia, and that also carries over into academics. So you can sit there and draw those correlations, but you need to have the right discussion with your team with regards to the negative impact and pointing to that negative impact. And at that point, you can sit there and say, this is how we address it, and can we adopt that? And those are the avenues. And I know it sounds simplistic on my end, but a lot of this stuff is new ground. And so, yeah, when you're the first one charting that course, it gets a little difficult sometimes. It's a little harder being the first one, out of the gate. Okay, but that's the job of advocacy, isn't it?